Luke chapter 6 in 5 minutes. If you want this free handout, you can get it at the link down below. The events of Luke chapter 6 all happen during Jesus' earthly ministry. Really, the rest of the book of Luke will happen between the years of 30 and 33 AD, roughly. There are several important characters that appear in this chapter. We have Jesus, the Messiah, the Christ. There's also the Pharisees. They are the Jewish religious leaders who kept the Jewish religious law with strict rigor, and they also enforced it on the Jewish people. And then there's the scribes. They were considered the experts of the law, and people went to them for interpretations about the law. They also had some legal authority. There's also an unnamed man with a withered hand, and Jesus is going to meet him on the Sabbath day. And then finally, we have the 12 apostles, who were Jesus' closest companions. We aren't given a lot of information about the exact locations where the events of chapter 6 happened, but it's almost certain that they happened in the Galilee area and probably around the city of Capernaum. In verse 12, we'll see Jesus going up a mountain, but we don't know the name of that mountain. And then in verse 17, he descends that mountain to teach the people. Let's do a quick overview of the chapter now. In verses 1 through 5, the first section, Jesus is accused of breaking the Sabbath day. So one particular Sabbath day, Jesus and his disciples, they were walking through a grain field and they were picking and eating the heads of grain. And the Pharisees came up to Jesus and they accused him of breaking the Sabbath day law. Jesus answers them by correcting their interpretation of the Sabbath day laws. He shows them that they were incorrect, and he tells them that he is the true interpreter or the Lord of the Sabbath. In the next section, Jesus heals a man with a withered hand. This is verses 6 through 11. Jesus is in the synagogue, and it's the Sabbath day or Saturday, and there was a man there with a withered right hand. The Pharisees and the scribes, they were watching Jesus very closely to see if he would heal the man, because if he did, they were going to accuse him of working on the Sabbath day, and work was a violation of the Sabbath day law. But again, Jesus then shows them how incorrect they are in their interpretation of the Sabbath day laws. He points out to them and to all of the people in the synagogue the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and the scribes, and then he goes ahead and he heals the man's withered hand. The next block of text is a really short section, but a really important one. Jesus selects his 12 apostles, verses 12 through 16. So Jesus goes up into a mountain and he prays all night. Then in the morning, he selects the 12 apostles. The biggest part of this chapter is in this last section, verse 17 through 49. Jesus comes down from the mountain and he begins teaching the people about what it looks like to be a citizen of the kingdom of God, how you ought to act, how you ought to live. He taught that those who were poor in spirit, those who hungered for righteousness, and those who were persecuted would be blessed. He warned people about trusting in riches and also courting the favor of men more than the favor of God. He told his listeners to love their enemies and to not retaliate when somebody did evil to them. Then he talked to them about judging other people, telling them not to judge people unjustly or in hypocrisy. He compared people to fruit trees, good people bearing good fruit for the kingdom of God, bad people bearing evil fruit. He then concluded his teaching with another comparison, this time about a man building a house. People who heard Jesus' words and applied them was like a man who built a house on a deep foundation. A person who heard Jesus' words but didn't apply them was like a man who built a house without a foundation. And when the flood came, or the tragedy or the difficulty came, the man who built his house on the foundation, his house was secure. But the man who built his house without a foundation, his house was destroyed and washed away. How is this chapter important in the big picture? Well, it reveals that the Jewish nation had a very deep misunderstanding of God and his laws. The Pharisees, the scribes, they were supposed to be the religious teachers. They were supposed to teach people the law, but Jesus exposes them as very corrupt. Who knows how many honest Jews were misled by these so-called teachers? And this was a deep underlying problem for the Jews, and it affected the way that they saw the Messiah. Finally, let's talk about takeaways or applications. The Pharisees, they condemned Jesus of breaking the Sabbath day because he broke their traditions, their ideas about what the law should say. And we need to be careful that we're not doing the same thing. We don't have the right to judge people based off of our rules. Where God has not judged, we don't have authority to judge. The second application is pretty simple from Jesus' teaching. Have you prayed for any of your enemies lately? Try to think of somebody who disagrees with you, maybe you don't get along with, maybe somebody who you view as a political enemy, and pray for them. And when you do, ask yourself, was it easy to pray for them, or was it difficult to even get the words out of my mouth? And if it was difficult, what does that tell you about the condition of your heart, especially in comparison to the heart of Christ?